actually talk about you all the time. Uh, actually, just telling people, I'm like, our logo was designed by the coolest logo designer ever. I'm really happy that finally able to get on a call and kind of talk to you about you know just just learning a little bit more about you and about your work and stuff like that. But also, I just want to catch up with you. How have you been? How
Good, good. Living
um
here in California with a friend of mine, and we're just hanging out, enjoying the weather. And
Wonderful. And what part of Cali are you in right now?
I'm in a place called Los Gatos, which is a like bedroom community of San Jose.
Okay. Is that north, south, central Cali?
It's south. It's the Bay Area.
Oh, the
It's
Bay
it's
Area. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's an hour south of San Francisco.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for taking a little time to speak with me. One of the reasons why I wanted to kind of interview you is one because you're just so interesting, but also because you have been a kind of important part of Barbershop Books' journey. When I first had the idea, before it was even in a single barbershop anywhere, you were just really helpful in helping us turn what was just an idea in my head into a logo and a kind of brand identity that is only just kind of increased over time. What are you up to these days? uh
Well,
just
first, I want to congratulate you on making it such a huge thing. Like you had this idea and it went from your head to this gigantic thing. I mean, the logo was kind of beside the point. You could have done it with any logo. It sounds like it was a good idea and it was, going to take off, and you did a lot of good for kids. And I was just kind of glad to be part of it.
yeah. Well, thank you for that. um Yeah, no, I mean, right now we have child-friendly reading spaces in 150 barber shops across 40 cities and 20 states. That is,
Jesus.
that's where we are. We have kids, we're reaching over 7,000 Black boys and other children every year. And, we're really excited about some potential partnerships with library systems and other people who are interested in trying to expand reading opportunities for Black boys and other children. So yeah, but also, yes, it was my idea, but there's been a lot of people who have helped along the way, offered their advice. um one I know we don't talk a lot, but I actually think a lot about a story that you told me about walking around, when you were much younger with, I guess, someone's dad or friend who did logos, and y'all would talk about logos. And I remember you telling me a story about him asking you about the logo of a shoe store
Oh
and
yeah, the brown
ask,
logo.
yeah, asking you whether you liked it. And you said you didn't like it because you didn't like brown, and him kind of talking to you about how important it is not to design things based on just what you like or don't like, but really around what will be most effective and impactful for whoever you're designing it for. And as I've thought about barbershop books and the types of experiences that we're trying to design for boys, Black boys in particular, to get them to engage with our books, to engage in reading. I think a lot about that, and I've thought about that, and trying to make sure that, you know, we may have ideas about what we want Black boys to read or what they should be reading, but they also, have interests that may not always align. And so we really have always tried to stay focused on the interests of the children and creating ways to really, solicit input from them. So yeah,
It's funny. It's
yeah.
funny you say that because one of the things I've been doing here, my brother has an engineering company, and you know, we teach engineer and we consult with all these big Google and Apple and stuff, and that's great. But the other thing he wants to do is bring in his inner city kids on STEM research, on
Yes.
STEM skills, you know, science, technology, and
Yep.
math. And so we've been part of it. We formed a company called US Tech, the US Technical Education Center. And I taught at the Job Corps. I taught a bunch of inner city kids. Well, they were sort of almost adults. And then I taught at the it's the East Oakland Youth Development Center, which is a huge thing here, funded by Jesse Jackson and Steph Curry and all these guys.
Oh, that's
And I
great.
taught them like a 12-week class. And these kids were like
On
13 and 14, engineering skills,
oh,
engineering
okay.
software. And when I was, you know, I did like an airplane and I did like a corkscrew. I did like what I thought was cool stuff, but they wanted to do like Sonic the Hedgehog and they wanted to, you know, things that I was
Yeah.
like, what? You know, it was just
Yeah.
so funny. Like their interests were very different than mine. And so the kind of projects I had to do to get them enthused were not things that I thought were cool. I'm like,
Yep.
here's double helix. And they were like, yeah, whatever. But if you did some cartoon character, they were all over it.
You know, it's so interesting you say that because I remember, you know, when I taught kindergarten, when I taught first grade, and we would do writing, right? A lot of times, what I would try and do is I would try and spark their creativity by saying, hey, let's try and come up with a story, right? And I would say, you know, what if a firefighter went to go put out a fire, or if you took a trip to the park? And I would try and get them to kind of come up with kind of, you know, just kind of organic ideas, but often their default would be to try and create stories about characters from movies or from cartoons. And I realized that for many of the children, kind of unstructured, like 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 creativity that was what's the word I want to say, that was just wasn't linked to some kind of you know, something that was already existed, was a real challenge for them. It was really difficult for them just to come up with ordinary stories from their own lives, because so much of their thinking and creativity, I think, have been connected to these brands and these ideas that were connected. But so then, how did you bridge where they were, the things that were interesting to them, to the kind of engineering concepts or the different ideas that you were looking to share?
It took a while. Um, I asked them what projects they wanted to make, you know, so we made a Jeep, and we made some other things, a sword, we made a sword. And once they realized that I was, you know, interested in doing the things they wanted to do, they kind of relaxed and let me do the kind of skills that I thought they would need to get a job, because this was what it was about, you
Yeah.
know. And part of what we were modeling, my brother and I were modeling, was that, you know, African American could be successful in these fields
Yeah.
without, you know, without anybody sort of helping you. Like they could be successful on their own if they got the right skills. They weren't depending on anybody else helping them. You know, it was up to them if they filled their head with the right software. And you know, my brother consulted. He helped design the Mars lander. I was there when the guys from NASA came to him at an engineering show and
What?
literally asked for him. Yeah, he helped design that. I was there when they were there, when the NASA guys were there. You know, they had it on the laptop, and they sat in the back of the booth for like 3 hours
Oh,
asking him his opinion.
that's really cool. That's
I know
really
that was a killer thing to be involved in, because here we are at an engineering show, and I had, you know, design visionaries on my shirt, and they said, "Are you Steve Samuel?" I said, "Well, I can get you to him. What do you need?" And they said, "Oh, we're from NASA." And I said, "Oh, what are you doing?" And they told me what they were doing. I'm like, okay, yeah, like right there, you know, there it was, like on the laptop, right? And
yeah.
there, you know, so three of these guys are with my brother in the back of the booth designing this thing. And I just thought, well, that's, you know, that's a story I'm going to tell the kids. But I went to this center. It was a church called Maranatha in San Jose, and they have an after school center. And I was teaching these young kids. They were like from 6 to 12.
Yep.
And I was teaching them, you know, these same kind of skills, like putting together things with these 3D toys, that you bring these geometrical shapes with, right?
Yep.
And so the second day I was there, my brother says, show them all your logos and show them all your stuff, because we're modeling that as much as anything. The fact that here's somebody who actually did it.
Yep.
So you can
Design,
actually do
yeah.
it because he did it, right? And so this kid comes up to me. He was 10 years old, and he's standing at my waist. He's looking up at me. He says, I showed my mom all your logos and stuff, and she said you were full of shit, but we looked you up and you're not.
Well, but you know what?
And then he walked away, and I just thought,
I mean,
okay, well,
do you remember my first response to you when you showed me your logos? Someone had connected us, and then you were like, oh, I'll send you my logos. And then you sent me your logos, and I said, sir, I can't afford you, sir. I just looked at your logos and immediately, and you, of course, said, you know what? I definitely do corporate logos, and people do pay me a lot of money. However, I also work on projects that are important to me, and I would like to talk to you about how I might be able to help you. And, I think that, here I am, degrees later, accomplishments later. And sometimes you get in a mindset of, defeating yourself before you've even, got a chance to get your foot in the door. And I think that, what you just said about, wanting to let the young people know that they have some agency in being able to pursue opportunities that they might not have even considered or thought about. I think, when people ask me, why am I so concerned about reading, or why am I so interested in reading? I believe it's about that idea that I want pretty much everyone, but, considering the state of our world and the challenges that Black boys face in our society, I'm especially interested in ensuring that Black boys can realize their full potential. And I think that one of the ways that they can kind of be in the driver's seat, right, is by being believing that they're learners and that they're readers, and that they don't have to wait for someone else to kind of tell them what to learn or what to read, but that they can actually have something that's of interest or that they're curious about, and they can actually go out and find out, how to do it. But it's really, really cool that you are involved in kind of, doing STEM things. But are you still designing and drawing still?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Oh, okay. So are there any kind of cool design projects that you've worked on recently that you can talk about that you really liked?
Yeah, there's a place out here called the Human Awareness Institute, and it's called High, and I really like we've been working with them, and they're kind of a self-help, self-awareness group. And I got to do their logo. They run workshops that a lot of people that I know belong to. And that's kind of cool, because every time we go to a workshop now, my stuff is on a banner, and it's on everybody's water bottle, and people have t-shirts, and every time I get a newsletter from those guys, which is once every couple of days, because they're very, very active out here in Northern California, that's kind of neat. And I've just gotten to do really, fun stuff for interesting companies. And it's been really, great to sort of partner with people and have them be so excited. I was at a resort, and this woman came up to me, and she's an artist, and her name is Wendy. And it was I just did a logo for her art thing. And then the next time I went up there, we were having a big festival there, and she had it on a big banner, and she had her booth up with her artwork. But she had come to me, even though she was an artist, she had come to me to do her logo. And I literally did it for her on a napkin, like sitting right there. We were just sitting right there on these beach chairs. And I looked at her and I went, oh, yeah, something like this. And she freaked out,
Well, that the quickness or the speed with which you're able to ideate and to create is something that, is another insight that I feel like I gained from our conversation, one of our first conversations, because I remember, telling you, oh, I can't, not only did I say I can't afford you, I think I said something along the lines of, I can't afford your time or something. And you said, people don't pay me for my time. They pay me for my expertise. And you said, sometimes it doesn't take me, a long time to come up with a logo. And I do remember that I sent you our concept or my idea or whatever. And, I think, literally half a day later or not even, you just sent out like 6 different concepts, and I was just like, I mean, I know he said he works fast, but how can it be that you can put it together? But it really just is proof of, when you have so much experience, and you know how to use the tools, right? That you use, you work and you see it in a different way than other people. I know that, when I hear these sports announcers, specifically for football, talking about how quarterbacks see the field, right? And how, like, literally in a split second, they see how the defense is organized, where all the defense players are. And in a split second, they're able to think about what they're going to do, what play they're going to call in a split second. And it's just so interesting to me to see and hear through, how you kind of, apply that to not only the art process, but also communicating someone's brand, right? Because it's not just that people want you to draw some art. They have a brand, they have programs, or they have products that they are trying to sell, or trying to services they're trying to provide, or impact they're trying to achieve. And so I think that's really cool. So I actually do have some questions I actually want to ask, and that I make sure that I get through. Oh, and if you and your brother ever create a engineering children's book, a book about engineering, or any part of engineering, or anything like that, just know that the Barbershop Books e-library that we launched during the pandemic, we would love to be able to put it in our e-library, so that children can have access to hearing about engineering concepts and stuff like that. So yeah, that's a selfish me wanting a children's book about engineering from you guys. I'm sure it would be really dope to kind of see how you would communicate engineering concepts to children. But okay, so let me get to these questions. I actually wrote down some questions that I wanted to kind of get from you. So the first one is, can you tell me about your journey into graphic design? How is it that you came to design all those logos that when that kid showed it to his parents, they're like, there's no way you talk to the guy who designed these logos? Like, how did you get to where you are in terms of becoming a graphic designer?
My dad was an artist, and he always had us, doing that kind of thing. And it was something, we could afford to do. Like, he could buy you a pen and paper right away. And so if you wanted to do something, have something, he would have us make it. We wanted a car, like I wanted a car for the Buzzarama track. And he says, okay, well, here's what the specs are. We can make a car like that. So
here's what the specs are. Your dad was an artist, but he also built things as well?
Yeah, he had so many jobs before he was a school principal. He had lots of jobs. He was an electrician. He was a carpenter. He was all these different sort of trades things. And that's what he thought he was going to go into. And then it was an old guy, some old Jewish guy in his school that convinced him to go to college, because he wasn't even going to fill out his college for him because he didn't think he could afford to go. And so, they were all filling out the forms. And he goes, Samuel, how come you're not filling out your form? He goes, well, I'm not going to college. I have a good job as an electrician at this trade thing, and I'm making good money. And he says, why don't you fill it out anyway? He says, you don't know the future. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know who you're going to be or who you're going to want to be. He goes, why don't you just fill it out and see what happens? And my dad was like, okay, whatever, fine. So he fills it out. And then 6 months later, it came back that, there was some special program and he got into Brooklyn College. And he was just really shocked and never thought he could go, but they had some kind of a program. And he, went for 8 years at night and, got his degree. And that opened him up to being able to teach.
What did your father study?
Just education.
Okay.
Yeah. Because he thought he could teach the things that he knew. And he ended up becoming a school principal. But it was those kind of things that he wanted for us. So he would look at something and say, well, if you want a car, here's how big the wheels have to be. Here's an axle. Here's how you put them together. And you could take a soda can and you could, weld this thing with a little welder. Soldering, we soldered the things together.
Wow.
And so it was, you had to make the stuff that you wanted because he wasn't rich at the time and he couldn't afford all those fancy toys. But he says, you could make this if you had some wood and some wire and some cardboard and some glue. So we made our own toys, and that was sort of the beginning. And then later when I was in college, I was buying this pair of skis that I had saved up for 6 months. It was like $200, but at $3 an hour, it takes quite a while. And I saved up for these skis, and I wanted my name on them along the ski and not across. And the guy goes, what do you care? And the girlfriend goes, oh, he's an artist. He's particular about everything. And the guy says, well, if you're an artist, why don't you do me a logo for my shop? And I did it, I went home and did it in like 4 hours, and I came back and I showed it to him. And he goes, yeah, this is nice. Why don't you take the skis? And I was shocked because I thought maybe he would give me $20.
And you got the skis for free because what did that do for you to have someone pay you?
Well, it blew my mind because here I had been working at the cafeteria, for all these hours to make this money. And then I go home and I draw a picture for 4 hours and I come back and give it to the guy. And
$200. Well, and wait, what year was this? Because $200 today.
This is 1975.
Yeah, I was gonna say $200 then is different from $200 today.
It's probably $800 or more than that. In terms of
that's transformative.
Yeah.
I was doing an interview like 2 days ago, and somebody asked me, when did you know that comedy was something, stand-up comedy? Because I've been doing stand-up for the past 13 years. They said, when did you know that like stand-up comedy was something that you wanted to continue doing? And I remember telling them that, a kind of veteran comedian, really funny, she said to me, Alvin, you're really funny, and I want to pay you to perform on my next show. And I remember thinking to myself, no one has ever paid me to do stand-up. I was doing it, but no one paid me to do it. And to have someone who I thought was really funny and who had been doing it a long time say to me, I'm going to actually give you some money to do this thing. I feel like it didn't make me quit being a teacher and just go do stand-up. But it did flip a switch for me that, like, what? The investments I've made of going to these open mics and running around, is something that the affirmation, I guess. It really provided an affirmation. All right, so you get these free skis, right? From just sketching a logo. And for you, you're like, oh crap, I worked all these hours to save this money, and now I just got it. And so then what was the next thing for you after that?
So I went back to my girlfriend's mother worked at the college, and we went back there and we were talking to her about it. And she says, oh, well, the ride share board at the university needs they had this ride sharing board at the in the student center.
Yeah.
And she says, you should do the ride share board, make it look nice. So I did this little logo for ride sharing where the car was like books, and it was just kind of this like, interesting thing. And then somebody saw it and they said, we want you to do something for the entertainment committee. And then somebody else from the judicial board at the school wanted another logo. And there was a guy who already did logos. His name was Paul Weiskopf. He did logos at the school. And within a half a year, he was kind of out of business because all the people who usually went to him started coming to me. And he
Wait,
was
they
really
were
pissed
paying
about
you.
it.
They were paying you?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, $20, $30, $40, but
Yeah,
they were still paying me. And it was still, again, 10 hours at the cafeteria to make $30 or 2 hours at night in my room doing something I wanted to do, and then having people see it. And they put it up on a big window at the university, and they put it up, like that was really the thing, is that my posters were going up whenever they showed a movie at the university. I was doing a poster for that movie.
What did that do for you? The seeing something that you created add value for other people. Like, what did that do to you?
It made me realize how powerful the whole art thing was, because it was something that I was doing that people had appreciated me for. But now this was going beyond me and beyond just a couple of friends, because I was, it was all over the university. It was in every dorm, when they did a movie, when they did something. And here's a funny story. I had these posters that I was doing, and I went to show it to somebody. I said, oh, here's the latest poster. And when I looked at it closely, I realized it had been slashed. Like somebody had slashed it with a razor blade, and you couldn't see it if it was on the wall. But if you tried to move it or anything, like the wind blew,
it wasn't the
apart.
old logo, dude, was it? No, it was.
No, well, this is what I thought. I thought maybe this is an ex, or maybe this is somebody. So I watched for 2 or 3 weeks, and every time I put up a poster, just the movie posters, they got slashed. And I went like to all over the university, like everywhere that they all, up and down this big campus, and every single one. So finally I went to the program director and I said, look, I don't want you to get alarmed, but I want to tell you that something is going on. Somebody has a thing against me, and they're slashing all of my movie posters. And she says, no, I'm doing that. And I went, what do you mean you're doing that? And she says, they're so popular that people are stealing them before the movie ever gets showed.
And so she's slashing them to try and prevent people from stealing the posters.
Because you couldn't, they would work as long as they were
and
flat.
here you were,
but if you tried to take it, it would fall apart.
You were probably formulating some theory, right? About a poster slasher who's a serial poster slasher running through campus.
Right. Like I had some enemy that I didn't even know. And it turned out it was her, because they were so popular that they were getting stolen before the movie was shown.
Wow.
And so what I did was I put up a note and I said, if you'd like a poster, because it was just silk screening and they had, tons of supplies. I said, if you like a poster, give me your name and I'll print you one. And so that way, everybody who wanted a poster got an extra one. I printed like 40 extra, and people came and got them, and they didn't have to.
Free. The college gave them for free.
Well, nobody knew. I mean, they had a gigantic room with, thousands of sheets of paper.
You know what that
reminds me? It was a university at that time. They didn't care.
You know what that reminds me of? So I read Stephen King's book on writing. I think it's Stephen King on writing, or it's.
Oh, that's a great book. That's a really good book.
He talks about him and his brother with a printing machine in their garage, and him making, their own little magazine that they were selling and making real money. Like the kids liked it so much that they were actually able to sell it. Just their own little kind of business thing. So that kind of reminds me of that kind of like entrepreneurial type of thing.
Can you see this?
Yeah, I can see it.
So this is it. This was the first logo I ever did.
This was the one that was for the ski. Oh my God, the skis. Yo, yes, he did give you that for free. He absolutely did. Wait, but here's my thing. Okay, so I'm looking at this. You said you did this in 4 hours or whatever. Here's my question. Well, first of all, this was from 1970 something. So did you reproduce this from memory?
No, this is the actual. This is. I had a picture of it. I had a photostat of it.
Okay, so that means like do you've been collecting every logo you've ever done since 76
Yeah, pretty much.
and you just saved them. You just saved them. So you have folders and then it went digital. So you've now digitized them all.
Yeah, I have all of them.
Wow. How many logos would you say you've done since this logo?
There have probably been 300.
So Barbershop Books is one of those 300.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. That's really really amazing.
I mean,
So
300 that I think are noteworthy. I've probably done 1,000, you know, but you know, not logos per se, but little stuff and lots of design jobs and
okay,
brochures
so
and other things.
so here's a question I have, right? So okay, you are, you just create this sketch for this guy, for this logo, and he says he's going to pay you, but you don't create a logo like that overnight, right? You didn't just wake up and boom, I'm going to just sketch it out. Like, how did you develop your art skills? So your dad has you guys drawing things or making things. Did you also have a sketchbook that you just kept with you to sketch ideas just for fun or whatever? Or what is the process that even got you to a place that you were able to produce a quality logo in 4 hours on a
I
whim?
had a teacher in fourth grade. I was in an accelerated class in this school in fourth grade, and she said one day, it was just an exercise. She said, draw a word that looks like the way you're drawing the word. Like she says, draw like the word water, and maybe the W would be a wave.
Yep. Yep.
She said, do something like that. And we did that for like an hour. And everybody did like one or two, and I did like 10 because I thought it was like the coolest thing, like combining words and pictures. I didn't even know you could do that.
Yep.
And it blew my mind. And I continued to do that. And she never did it again. I thought this would be a great exercise. And next time she does it, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. She never did it again. But it's something that since then I've done at different schools and programs, and you should see what the kids have come up with. I have recorded some of the things that I've done with kids and inner city kids, young kids, and they come up with logos that concepts you wouldn't even believe, concepts that would blow your mind, that were as good as any, world-class designer if you give them a couple of hours to think about it. And so I'd been doing that since then, just fooling around with words and pictures. And so by the time somebody was ready to pay me to do it, I had already done like a couple of hundred of them just in my head, playing with words and more subtle concepts.
Yeah.
And so this one Asian girl at this school, I have a friend who's an art teacher, and she said, do that at my place. And I said, okay. And I came. And so for the first hour, I got, kind of crap. I got, this and not really creative stuff. But then this one girl, she came up with the word bandit, except the B was like, it was turned on its side, and it was the mask, like a mask and a bandit
Oh yeah,
would
the
wear.
cover of the eyes. Yep.
So
Yep,
that
yep.
was the B, and ANDIT, and then I put it up on the board. I said, "This is what I'm looking for," and then the kids went nuts, and they did such beautiful, amazing, subtle, insightful things.
Oh my
And
goodness, I
it was
love
what I
that.
had been doing, and they did this in like a half an hour. They came up with things that could have been logos for,
I love that.
some corporate thing, right? If she had a company called Bandit and she did that logo, you'd look at it and you'd go, "Oh my God, that's great!" It was just such a great, and it's so that creativity is there. It's a question of tapping into it, and I'd been tapping into mine for years. And so when it finally came that I was ready to do something, I had already been doing it without realizing that it was a job that people did.
And that is one of the things that I think about, people talk about Malcolm Gladwell and the 10,000 hours and all of that kind of
I was going to
thing.
mention that to you, yeah, but about being an expert in Blink,
And like, I think that when I taught very young children, right? And I think that a lot of adults really do not understand the potential that children have. Like, I think that school uh, often only just scratches the surface of what children are capable of, you know. And I think that, giving kids more and more experiences so that they can discover the things that really spark their curiosity and that will cause them to want to do something even when no one is looking, even when there's a lot of other things that they could be doing. And when I think about the way that we want to curate books for Barbershop Books, I aspire for us to curate books that will inspire kids to read for fun. Not because someone tells them they have to, but because the topics, the curation, whatever it is so aligned to things that resonate with them that it makes them want to pick up a book. But that is just so interesting to me. So you had all of these hundreds and hundreds of pretty much concepts that you had just been doing for fun, that when this other opportunity presented itself, you were essentially ready to just kind of step on in. I mean, the idea that you in college replaced the professional logo person on your campus is just astounding to me. So, all right, you're in college. What were you studying at the time?
English.
So you're studying English, but you have this skill set that you've been cultivating for fun over time that you now realize can actually generate real money. Not, here's $1 or $2, but skis that you have been saying. Well, first of all, why did you even want skis? You were a skier? How did you, where did you grow up? I'm from Little Rock, Arkansas. So, skiing wasn't even something that would have even been in my realm of possibility or anything that I it's just hitting me now. I'm like, wait a minute. Why did you even want skis? Can we just go back?
Hey, so here's a life lesson. And, one of the advantages I think that I have is I remember every life lesson I ever learned. I remember where it was and when it was, and I recognized it at the time. So I had this girlfriend, and she was from there. She was from Connecticut, and her family had been skiers their whole lives. This was her thing that she did.
Oh, wait.
And so
where did you go to college?
At the University of Hartford in Connecticut.
That's why you were, okay, gotcha. We skipped a step. Okay, so you got to Hartford. Yep.
Right. So, and I'm saying, I don't ski. Black people don't ski, because they didn't then. They really didn't. I said, I'm not going to do that. Yeah, it's cold and it's going to break my leg, and I'm not doing it. So,
and where did you grow up?
In Brooklyn.
In Brooklyn. So you grew up in Brooklyn. What part of Brooklyn?
Brownsville, Linden Boulevard and Rockaway Avenue. You grew
up in Brownsville in the 70s.
Inner city, no, in the 50s.
50s. Okay. And then you make your way to Hartford, Connecticut for college.
Right.
Okay.
So she's trying to convince me to do this, and I'm not having it, right? I'm not going to do it. But I went to see her off the morning that she's going to ski. And she had this beautiful classic Mustang. And this guy's in the front seat. And it was a guy that I couldn't stand, a guy that liked her. And I was like, oh, they're going to spend 5 hours together driving up to this place and spend all day. So I said to her, what the hell? What's this guy doing in your car? And she looked at me and she said, and this was the life lesson. She goes, listen, she goes, you had first right of refusal. She goes, I asked you to be in the seat.
She said those exact words like a lawyer, like a contract.
Yes.
You have first rights of First of all, the fact that someone talks like that lets me know the type of and I'm not talking about in a mean way, the rich cultural or social capital that she had access to be able to describe an instance. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm totally interfering with your story. Finish telling me the life.
So she says, you had first right of refusal. And she goes, you gave it up. So she said, if you're not in that seat, you don't get to say who is. And I went, oh, And that was to me, that was like one of those life lessons. I went, don't ever forget this. And so when she came back, I said, let's go buy some skis. And I had those skis and I was in that seat every single time she went skiing after that.
Wait, okay, so you bought your first pair of skis, but at some point you decided I want an upgrade.
No, I'm an expert. I mean, I've owned, 5 pairs of skis
Well, no,
throughout my
but the
life.
guy who gave you the pair of skis, the skis that you got for free, was that your first pair of skis?
Yeah, but they were good skis. I skied on those skis for 5 years. They were great
so
skis.
you got your first pair of skis for free.
But they were good skis. I mean, $200 was a lot of money. Those were professional skis.
No, of course. I just didn't realize if that free pair of skis was like, you had bought a pair and then you went back to try and get a fancier pair that you like. So you actually saved up $200 to buy your first pair of skis.
Right.
You didn't buy a janky pair just to hold you over. You actually said, I want to get a nice pair, my first pair of skis.
Well, if I wanted to ski with her, I had to.
Right. Because
she was an expert. They were all experts. Her whole family were experts. They were members of the National Ski Patrol.
Wait. You didn't start on a little hill?
No.
What about your neck?
What about it?
What about your neck?
You should have seen me. I was covered with snow after the first day. We did one run on the bunny hill, and then we went up to the top. But this is what she did for a living. She was a ski instructor. She was a ski patroller.
You had an expert guidance helping to make sure you didn't break your neck. She cared about you, so she had an investment in making sure that your neck was still there in the same way that it was when she got you. Here's what I went to Iowa for college, right? In the cornfields of Iowa. And I remember the culture shock for me going to Iowa from Little Rock, Arkansas, right? And I remember I ran cross country. Now, I think there was one other guy on the cross country team named Omondi, who was from Kenya. Him and me, we were the only melanin on the cross country team, right? And I remember these white guys telling me, Alvin, you got to come see the movie on campus they're showing. It's amazing. And the way they were talking about it, I thought it was an award-winning Oscar award. It was called the Rocky Horror Picture Show, right? I had never heard of this movie. I didn't know anything about it except the way these white boys were talking about it. I was like, well, I have to go. I'm in college. I'm here to get new experiences. I have to see, I go to this film. I was not ready. Mike. I didn't know. I was not ready. So first of all, I show up and everybody's dressed very interestingly. I just said they were dressed very interestingly. And I'm like, okay, so I guess there's some type of costume Halloween, or there's some kind of, I don't know. There's something that goes along with this film where you dress up. So I'm like, okay, well, all right, let's just see what's going on. I'm watching the film and, I don't know what is going on in this film. I literally am like, I'm lost. I'm watching it. I see people talking. People in the movie are moving and doing stuff, but I'm like, I don't understand what's happening. So I'm like, well, if I just watch more of the movie, I'll get it. I'll figure out what's happening. I'm a smart guy. I'm at Grinnell College in Iowa. I didn't. And then this is what really just scared me. It scared me. People in the audience, these college students, they started saying lines in the movie that weren't in the movie in unison. And so I was like, how is it that other people know what other people are going to say and when to say it? And I just got scared and ran out the movie theater. I was from Arkansas.
What year was this?
This was 2000. I went to college from 2007. From 2003 to 2007. Now, I went to a hippie school. Grinnell College was a hippie school. They had their own little theater their own movie theater on campus because it's in the middle of the cornfields. So the college invested to kind of make the college its own kind of city almost. It's small, but you know, they made it so that pretty much anything students would need, they could kind of get it, you know, on campus. But I just remember being so scared and by the
But
way
you came in so late. So I saw that movie when it was first shown. When it was first shown in 1978, 78 or 77. And so that whole culture hadn't developed. That movie was 20 years old by the time you saw it.
right,
And it was
right.
like seeing Star Wars later when
Well, yeah,
everybody's got lightsabers and
there was
Wookiees
no
and
Google. There was no
speaking the
Google at the
language.
time to look up cult films, and I didn't know. I went in cold. Just
Right.
they said everybody, all the white guys on the cross country team said you have to see it. It's the best movie ever. You're never gonna forget it. They were right about never forgetting it. They were right about that part. Wait, so what was your experience when you saw it for the first time as a black dude? You know, in from Brooklyn or where?
Well, I wasn't so isolated because you have to understand, because I went to Brooklyn, but then I went to school in Manhattan with a bunch of kids. I went to a science and math high school.
I see. So
I went to Stuyvesant High School in Manhattan.
okay, say no more. So Stuyvesant is one of the specialized high schools. You know, if parents, you know, the rich parents are like prep schools or one of the selective high schools. So you got a chance to go. Well, I have a question for you. So even before going to college and kind of discovering that you could get paid for your art, were there experiences in high school that kind of gave you inklings that art might be something that would be a part of your career?
No,
Nothing.
no. I was concentrated on my science and my math. I was good at art, but it was just a hobby. It was just a fun thing. I had no aspirations to do that at all.
So what were you thinking? You say you were focused on math and science. What were your brother is an engineer? What were you thinking that you would want to be when you were in high school?
I was going to law school. I was going to go to law school. Yeah,
Legal
my dad's best friend was a lawyer, and he had a firm all ready for me to take over. It was a little housing firm that he had. You know, he did real estate law, and he had like 4 people that worked for him. And I was supposed to become a lawyer, pass the bar, intern with him, and join his firm, and then
and
at
the
some
rest
point
was going to
take it
be
over.
history.
That's what I was supposed to do.
And then you got some free skis.
And then I did an annual report. I did the cent of an annual report. I did another illustration, and they paid me $2,000, which was half of my tuition for the entire year. The school I went to was $3,500, and that was crazy money. Harvard was $5,000.
Wait. They paid you $2,000 to do an annual report in 76?
To do the centerpiece, just the center illustration. Yes. And I called my parents and said, I don't need any more money.
I'm thinking about that right now. And I'm thinking about that in 76. And I'm like, that's mind blowing.
Yeah, it was literally more than half my tuition for the whole entire year. Like books and food and everything.
That makes you sit up and pay attention.
It sure as hell did. It made them sit up and pay attention. They said, what do you mean you don't need any more money? And I said, I'm making money. I don't need any more money from you.
You didn't take the money for the logo?
I did, but I didn't need money from my parents.
Oh, your parents were like, what? Oh, yes. They were like, what are you doing that you don't need any more money? So, I mean, of course, I can already tell from your journey that your parents were supportive.
Well, they didn't want me to be an artist. They really thought I was going to do, they thought I was going to do like caricatures at Union Square. That's what they thought when they heard it. But I said, look, I have people who are doing this who believe in me. This was 3 years later when I had done a bunch of logos at school and some
you
local
had a
logos
portfolio. You
yes.
had a portfolio you could bring back to your parents and tell them, I got paid this much for this one. I got paid this much for this one. I got paid this. And this is how long it took me to do this, this, and this. Have you ever been paid that much money for this amount of time? Wow, that's and what was their response after you kind of shared that with them?
Well, they still said, lawyers make more than that. We want you to have a secure future. And I mean, they weren't completely wrong. I didn't have to be a success at this, but it was when I was 26 and did the Sears logo. And then it came on TV the next Thanksgiving, the following Thanksgiving, we were all at a family gathering and they introduced it. Come see the lighter side of Sears. That was the first logo I got to do. That was a big logo, you know.
And then
And
your parents, because I mean, what year was that you did the Sears logo?
so 26 from 1958. So it was 1988, I
Okay.
guess, or 1984. Yeah, 1984. And then it was 1985, 86 that it came on. We were all at Thanksgiving dinner and it came on TV. They said, come see the lighter side of Sears. And my mother looked over and she went, because we were all Thanksgiving, but the TV was on. And she went, oh, Jesus, that's Mike's logo. And so the whole family looked, and my parents looked back at me, and it was that moment that it changed for them. It was that moment that they realized that maybe I wasn't going to starve and I wasn't going to be out on the street doing, Disney caricatures of people who came by.
At Times Square.
Right.
That's what your parents, you know what? But no, I mean, I do stand-up comedy, but I, I'm an educator and so, I hear the stories of course, how comedians' parents are like, you want to be a clown? The immigrant comedians talk about, they try and explain to their immigrant parents that they want to move to New York City to do stand-up. And they're like, you want to be a clown? You want to be, and so, and I understand. I do. And here's the reality is that, you really are a success story. But so tell me, a lot happened between getting paid by these colleges and doing the Sears logo. You said 3 years. Was that what you said? 3 years? No, it was more than.
No, it was more. I was 26 when I got the Sears logo.
Right. Okay, and
So that was 10 years from the beginning to that. That was 10 years from the start. 16 when I went to school, and then I got the Sears logo when I was 26. So I'd been doing it for 10 years then.
Wait. You went to college at 16? No, you went to high school.
Yeah. No, college. I skipped a grade. I skipped 8th grade.
Oh, okay. Okay. No, you skipped a few or 16. Normally around 18, right? Is when you, so you started college early and you're like kicking butt with design. So over that 10 years, what happened? Did you go to work at a firm or design firm or how did you get a foothold in the kind of?
I had a friend. So we went to this camp in the summer. And the way we could afford to go to this camp was because my parents were teachers, they had the summer off. So they worked at this camp. My dad did arts and crafts and my mother was the nurse at this camp. And this girl went there whose dad was a famous illustrator. And she said to my dad one day, my daddy draws, your son should meet my dad. And she was like 10. And so my dad said, well, you should meet as many people as you can. And this girl says her dad is an illustrator, so you should go see him. And I thought, I don't want to see this girl's dad. I don't know who this girl's dad is. So I finally went and I went to his studio and I'm sitting in his studio. He had this big barber chair and I'm sitting there talking to him, kind of casual, like just sitting, slouching in the chair. And I started looking around at his work on the walls and I went, wait a minute, I've seen these in art directors' annuals. I've seen these in different books. I've seen this work all over the place. And I'm like, oh, Jesus, I know who this guy is. And suddenly I sat up straight and I was like, yes, Mr. This and yes, Mr. That, because I realized I was talking to somebody who was for real. He was doing this for a living and he was not just doing it, but he was very famous. His name was Tim Lewis and he had done all kinds of illustrations and magazine covers and I was just like, oh my God. So it just this casual meeting. And he was the guy that mentored me. And he said, go to visual arts and take these designers and meet this guy, and we'd walk around the city.
And this
And
was in high school? When was
no,
this?
this was after college.
Oh, when you met the person's father.
Yeah. So I
Okay.
was 20.
Okay.
Right. And I'm walking around New York with this guy. And I had got a job at an ad agency, which didn't last. And I got a job as a freelancer at this kind of a design house, which
Okay.
didn't last. But then I got introduced to this guy who did typefaces, and he taught me how to do hand lettering. And that was really great. That was the skill that I started with. They hired me for my lettering first, and then later on for my design. But he did the typeface called Avant Garde. His name was Tom Carnesi, a very famous designer. And he showed me how to do, beautiful lettering. And I went for a job at a place called Mergenthaler, which did master plates for the typefaces. And I had been doing this guy's typeface on my own at night, doing 2 or 3 characters a night. And the job at the qualification at this job, 50 people showed up for this one slot. So I thought, well, I'm not going to get this. But he said, do this letter S and do it backwards in a different size, because they did everything in reverse because it was film to typefaces, right?
Wait, this was like a on the spot test.
Yes.
That was a part of the interview.
Yes, he gave everybody a piece of paper, and he said, do this letter with no tools. He says, no straight edge, no nothing, just do it with your hand. Right. And everybody lost their shit. Right. They freaked out, and they lost it because they weren't used to working without tools and working freehand. They just didn't do this kind of thing. But I had been doing this for this guy all night, every night. So I did this thing, and I came back in 10 minutes, and I had done it, perfectly. And I said, what else do you want me to do? Because I thought it was a whole battery of stuff. Right.
Oh, that black excellence. Wait, how
and
many
this guy
black
goes,
people
he
were
says,
in the room who of
none,
the 50?
None, zero.
So not only were you the only one, but those 10,000 hours, just activated.
So he says, he looks at me and he goes, who are you?
Who are you? That's
what
exactly what he should have asked. Who are you? Where did you come from?
So he opened the door and he told all the other people to go home. Some of them hadn't even started yet.
Right in front of you? Right in front of you.
He just sent them home. He says, we filled the position, go home.
Oh, man. You know what, though? You know what that makes me think about? It makes me think about Bruce Lee, right? So, Bruce Lee, he talked about, being like water. And they said, he said he didn't want to be locked into any one particular style.
Right.
Right. He wanted to master all the martial arts, and when in a competition, when fighting, he wanted to use whatever was going to be most efficient to get the job done. He didn't want to limit himself in terms by a particular style. And so, I hear you talking about lettering. I hear you talking about freehand. I hear you talking about, all, making words that are like the word, all these different things. And I feel like, you almost created your own multi-decade residency.
Yes, in a lot of ways. In a lot of ways, I did. It was my own program of what would be education, except I was taking people. I went to school. I went to classes this guy recommended, and he says, go to class with this designer, go to class with that designer. And I was doing work for them in the evenings. I was doing work for these famous designers in the evenings as part of my education.
When you say you were doing work for them, they were paying you to do projects?
Oh yeah, book jackets.
Okay.
And logos. And first it was just sort of cleaning up what they had done, but then I would change it. And I'd say, if you did this, it would look better. And they go, because they were professionals and they knew what their stuff was, they weren't insecure. They would go, oh yeah, that's better.
Because it's about the art. It's about the art.
Right, for them.
The ego
And a lot of what happens when you're in art school is you're with people who they're teaching because when you're in a regular art school, you're with people who are teaching because they failed. They're teaching because they couldn't make a living doing it on their own. But when you're at School of Visual Arts, you're at Cooper Union, you're at places like that, you're taking classes from the top professionals who are teaching at night because they want to find the new talent.
Oh, they're sourcing.
Yes.
They're teaching to get them before they can't afford them.
Yes. That's why they do it. And they teach at night. So I was taking night classes, not daytime classes. I was taking these classes in the evening with these guys who were working designers during the day. So it was very different because I wasn't being held down by teachers who were insecure. I was being held up by people who wanted to use my talent, leverage my talent for themselves and saying, well, if I teach you this, then you can do it for me. And so that's what happened is they would teach me things that I could use. And then they'd go, now you know how to do this. Here's something I need you to do. Or now you know how to do that. Here's something I need you to do. So one guy gave me a book jacket the day after I met him. And he was a very famous book jacket designer named Fred Marcelino. And I had lunch with him. And the next day he says, I don't want to letter this. I don't want to do this. I designed it, but I don't want to letter this. But since you're a hand letterer, why don't you do it? And it was The Unbearable Lightness of Being. It was the hardcover book jacket of that book, which became a huge thing, right? It became a movie and everything like that. And so I got that to do, and I just would improve the things. I'd say, you could do it this way, you could do it that way. And because they were professionals, they only cared about the result. So after a while, they would just go, you do it. They didn't even bother
I have a question.
sketching it out for me.
Have you ever thought about doing a TED Talk about design?
No.
Is that something you would even be open to? Like I'm just asking. If I told you that, I don't know, that would be a possibility. Is that something you think you would do? I just feel like all the experiences and insights that you have from your journey, TED Talk, their tagline is ideas worth sharing. And as I listen to you talk, I feel like you have so many ideas from, your vast experiences that are absolutely worth sharing. That's part of the reason why I wanted to have this conversation, because, as I think about the fact that Barbershop Books logo sits alongside the Sears logo and all these other, amazing logos. I feel so humbled in that you decided that it was something that you wanted to give your skills and your experience to, because we shouldn't have been able to afford you, and nor have probably many of the people who you have worked with. But you're a very generous person, and so I think the last thing, I know we've been talking for so long, and I know you want to get outside into the good weather. But I guess one of the last questions I think I want to ask is really like, what did influence, your decision to work on the Barbershop Books logo, and I'd love to hear, and maybe if you could just tell us a little bit about your process and how you came up with it, or anything that you feel like would be helpful.
Okay, well, here's the thing. There's a philosophical principle called enlightened self-interest, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's the principle behind like dictators and cult leaders in some way. And those things work generally, but they don't survive ever the death of the original charismatic figure. Dictatorships work and cults work. It's just that other influences come and influence those guys, and they become not so altruistic as they started to be. But many of them start as altruistic people. Many of them start with an idea, right?
And so Fidel Castro, right? He wanted people to be better, but then things took a turn and things went left.
Exactly, because they get this absolute power. But in my case, if I do something like, you have a great idea, right, and I can make it possible for you to do it, Like Nike didn't start as a $1 trillion company, and neither did Apple, neither did Google. Imagine if I had met those guys back then and did their logos for almost nothing, right? Then they become this gigantic company, and everybody else comes to me, Exxon and Sears and whatever. They don't know what I got paid for that logo. They just know, oh, I did the Apple logo, like Advil. I did the Advil logo, and they didn't even know that they were going to get the contract to do the medicine. It hadn't been deregulated then.
Yep.
And I did it for them for, almost no money. But that logo has gotten me so much work. So if you have a great idea and I think it's something worthwhile, and I do a logo for you, and you, like you're probably doing right now, you're making this into this big international thing, 10 years from now, 5 years from now, or next year when you do a TED Talk, that logo is going to be everywhere. And if I think you have a good idea, why not invest in that idea? And so everybody wins, right? I win because I get to help you do the thing. And if it never goes anywhere, then fine. But if it does go somewhere and it becomes this big, gigantic thing, oh, yeah, I did a logo for Barbershop Books. And people go, oh, well, that's a multinational company. You must have been paid $10,000. We'll pay you $10,000 to do our logo. And I go, okay, fine. They don't have to know. You won't tell them. I won't tell them.
No, nobody's telling.
So it's that kind of a thing. I'm investing, right? I'm investing in people getting big and people growing, and the History Channel was nothing when I did. They used to have black and white footage of World War II. That's
and
all.
Now the H is in New York City. I tell people that. I'm like, the dude who did the History Channel logo, he did the Barbershop Books logo. And then they go, psh.
Right. And that itself was not such a big deal when I got it. It was a cable channel. Nobody knew from cable TV,
Right.
and I've done half a dozen cable channels that nobody ever heard of, but I also did A&E and VH1 and MTV News. And so those hit, right? Those became a big deal. And many of them didn't. I did, 3 dozen cable TV logos that nobody ever heard of, because they didn't hit. But the ones that do hit, they get you more work, because when you go for your next job 10 years later, you go, yeah, I did this, and yeah, I did that. And they don't realize that it wasn't such a big deal when you got it. It's just that, it grows up. So if I invest in things that grow up, it only ever helps me, but it also helps you. So everybody wins. So that's enlightened self-interest. And that's the reason. And when I did the Barbershop Books, I was trying to think of what I could do to make it unique and interesting. And those barber poles, it was because barbers were doctors at the back in the day, and they did all the surgery because they had the sharp instruments. And what they would do to advertise their craft was they would have a pole, and they would wrap a bloody rag around the pole to show people that they were also surgeons. Man. And that's how that striped barber pole, that's how that got to be a logo for a barbershop.
Wow.
Yeah, that was the way they advertised. So I was like, let me leverage that symbol. And I said, how can I put this into a book? And I said, oh, I could put it on the spine of the book. Oh, that would be cool. That would right away signal to people the confluence of those two ideas. So it was that kind of a thing that I was thinking, how can I take the things that are like a scissor? I did a scissor with a book, and that works okay, but it's kind of sharpish image, and I didn't like that. I couldn't do a razor with a book. So I thought, oh, a barber pole. I could put that into a book, right? So it was that kind of thinking, like, what are the things that symbolize barbershops? And what are the things that symbolize books? And how can I put them together in a way that's clever and fun and interesting, that makes people look and go, oh, I know what that is.
Yeah, that's great. And, I mean, it's just, it's been a journey for me. And, to see the way in which people have been so generous, with their time, with their expertise.
You have a good idea, man.
And I mean, thank you. I wish that there wasn't a need for barbershop books. I wish there wasn't a need, but there absolutely, not only is there a need, but, the U.S. Department of Ed, they most recently just, released, some of their longitudinal data around reading proficiency. And they found that the reading scores today for 4th grade children fourth grade students, the scores are what they were 20 years ago. And so due to the pandemic, a lot of children have lost what they say is about 20 years worth of gains, in reading scores. And unfortunately, Black boys are persistently and consistently, among the lowest, reading proficiency levels. But Barbershop books, we are making a difference. And we've had most recently an independent evaluation study that was released. And it showed that Black boys in our barbershops are more likely to be reading than to do anything else, including even being on a cell phone, or watching TV, or talking to other. There, boys who come into our barbershops are more likely to be reading than doing anything else. And the control barbershop, no reading happening at all, observed at all. And so, I think for me, I'm just happy to be able to share the progress with people who have been a part of our journey and been a part of helping to support our success. And you are one of those people. And, yes, Barbershop Books is a great idea. And, there have been a lot of people who have helped along the journey. But it is absolutely people like you who have, just been so generous with their time and expertise to contribute in the ways that they are able to contribute. And so I guess I would love to just kind of wrap this conversation by just giving you an opportunity. What would you say to anybody who's looking to either become, who are considering art or design, or who are considering getting involved with Barbershop Books? What would be, your words of, or thoughts, or words of wisdom to those individuals?
Well, I said this to somebody just last night. I had a friend of mine who's 20-year-old is trying to go into graphic design. And I said, do the best work you can for as many people as you can, and don't worry about what you're getting paid for it. Always do your best work, always do your absolute work, because the guy who did I Heart New York, who's Milton Glaser, I was in his class at School of Visual Arts, and somebody came with a project, and he turned it in, and he says, "What is this crap?" And the guy says, "Well," he says, "it was a project, but I was only getting paid $10. And he got angry. He says, "You listen to me." He says, "Every job you do it like a $10,000 job." Because he goes, the next person who sees this, you did a $10 job, that's what they're going to see in your portfolio. And that's all they'll ever pay you. And that's all you'll ever make as a designer. He says, but if you do a $10,000 job for somebody, no matter what you got for it, the next person who sees it in your portfolio will see a $10,000 job. And they'll pay you $10,000 because you did a $10,000 job. He says, so yeah, you give away a couple of pieces of artwork at the beginning of your career for nothing or practically nothing. He said, but if it's good work, people down the line will see it and they'll pay you what it's worth. And so this pursuit of excellence all the time, no matter what I'm doing, no matter who I'm doing it for. And the Sears logo itself was, the last time I worked for this guy, I did a logo for his mother-in-law. I couldn't even believe it. I'm like, your mother-in-law? He goes, yeah, my mother-in-law, my girlfriend's mother needs a logo. And he made me crazy over the thing. And I didn't even want to talk to the guy when he came back. And he's now the head of one of the biggest advertising agencies in New York City. And the next time he called me 2 years later, he was an up and coming art director, but he had this job on his desk and it was the Sears logo. And he gave it to me because I had done a good job for him on what I thought was this bullshit pain in the ass job. And it taught me a huge life lesson about, working with people and who they're going to become and always doing your best. And I didn't let him know that he was making me crazy. I just did the job because I was dedicated to doing the work.
You did the job.
And I got the job that changed my life because of it. So that devotion to excellence, that was a good tip that I got from this guy.
That was another one of those life lessons, the ones that that you do? Do
that
you
I
make a
remember.
mental note or do you write them down? Those life
No,
lessons?
I know every last one because they live for me. You know, they live for me when I hear that, you know, I hear it and I go, oh, this is one of those things. This is not just right now. This is a lifetime thing. This is a forever thing. The first time I got something stolen out of a car, you know, I got this brand new car and I had it in the inner city, and you know, somebody broke the window and took my sweater or something. And I went up to my dad and I thought he was going to be all sympathetic. And he was laying on the bed. He goes, yeah, he says, a car is not a safe. He goes, don't leave anything valuable in a car that you don't want stolen. And it was just like, again,
Yep.
check mark,
Yep.
right?
It's not a
You
safe.
know,
That's
right.
that's
Just,
clever.
you know, just that kind of thing, right? I remember all the times in my life when I heard something that sort of in a big way or a little way sort of changed my trajectory. And I think that, you know, this being excellent, excellence, you know, working at excellent thing, doing the very best you can all the time, no matter what, no matter who's watching, that's the thing that'll get you to the next level. If there was a next level for you with that, you know, to do the very best job that you can do. That's the advice that I would give to people. And it doesn't matter what it is you're doing, you know,
That's
just
great
stick
advice.
to that and chase that, because that's what people saw, you know, in my portfolio. I wasn't even asking for a job sometimes. Sometimes I was just asking for advice, or I wasn't even showing it to them. I was showing it to somebody else. And they happened to look and they said, hey, what is that? You know?
Wow. Wow. This has been a great conversation. I mean, I know we had many conversations during the time that we were, working on the Barbershop Books logo and then reading So Lit before that. But I'm so appreciative of your time, of your story. I can't wait to read, your autobiography, or I want to read the book. I want to hear all of these stories in even more detail. I will pre-order. Just please let me know. And for anyone who's listening, or watching or whatever, wherever this ends up, I hope that these are just such great jewels. This has just been so great. Thank you so much, Michael, for taking time to speak with me. And hopefully we'll get a chance to work together on something again soon.
Well, yeah. And if I now it was a good idea. If I think of a TED talk, I will certainly let you know and let you preview the text, because it never occurred to me to do that.
Well, so
So you will get the credit when I say
no, no need for that. Hold on one second. I'm gonna stop this recording because I